Chapter 91: Why You Take on Too Much. Planning Fallacy. Every morning you compile a to-do list. How often does it happen that everything is checked off by the end of the day? Always? Every other day? Maybe once a week? If you're like most people, you will achieve this rare state once a month. In other words, you systematically take on too much. More than that, your plans are absurdly ambitious. Such a thing would be forgivable if you were a planning novice. But you have been compiling to-do lists for years, if not decades. Thus, you know your capabilities inside out, and it's unlikely that you overestimate them afresh every day. This is not facetiousness. In other areas, you learn from experience. So why is there no learning curve when it comes to making plans? Even though you realize that most of your previous endeavors were overly optimistic, you believe in all seriousness that today the same workload or more is eminently doable. Daniel Kahneman calls this the planning fallacy. In their last semesters, students generally have to write this thesis. The Canadian psychologist Roger Boole and his research team asked the following of their final year class. The students had to specify two submission dates. The first was a realistic deadline, and the second was a worst-case scenario date. The result? Only 30% of students made the realistic deadlines. On average, the students needed 50% more time than planned, and a full 7 days more than their worst-case scenario date. The planning fallacy is particularly evident when people work together in business, science, and politics. Groups overestimate duration and benefits and systematically underestimate costs and risks. The conch-shaped Sydney Opera House was planned in 1957. Completion was due in 1963 at a cost of $7 million. It finally opened its doors in 1973 after $102 million had been pumped in, 14 times the original estimate. So why are we not natural-born planners? The first reason, wishful thinking. We want to be successful and achieve everything we take on. Second, we focus too much on the project and overlook outside influences. Unexpected events too often scupper our plans. This is true for daily schedules too. Your daughter swallows a fish bone. Your car battery gives up the ghost. An offer for a house lands on your desk and must be discussed urgently. There goes the plan. If you plan things even more minutely, would that be a solution? No. Step-by-step preparation amplifies the planning fallacy. It narrows your focus even more and thus distracts you even more from anticipating the unexpected. So what can you do? Shift your focus from internal things, such as your own project, to external factors like similar projects. Look at the base rate and consult the past. If other ventures of the same type lasted 3 years and devoured $5 million, this will probably apply to your project too, no matter how carefully you plan. And most importantly, shortly before decisions are made, perform a so-called pre-mortem session, literally before that. The American psychologist Gary Klein recommends delivering this short speech to the assembled team. Imagine it's a year from today. We have followed the plan to the letter. The result is a disaster. Take 5 or 10 minutes to write about this disaster. The stories will show you things might turn out. How? Chapter 92. Those wielding hammers see only nails. Deformation Professionelle. A man takes out a loan, starts a company, and goes bankrupt shortly afterward. He falls into a depression and commits suicide. What do you make of this story? As a business analyst, you want to understand why a business idea didn't work. Was he a bad leader? Was the strategy wrong? The market too small or the competition too large? As a marketer, you imagine the campaigns were poorly organized or that he failed to reach his target audience. If you're a financial expert, you ask whether the loan was the right financial instrument. As a local journalist, you realize the potential of the story. How lucky that he killed himself. As a writer, you think about how the incident could develop into a kind of Greek tragedy. As a banker, you believe an error took place in the loan department. As a socialist, you blame the failure of capitalism. As a religious conservative, you see in this a punishment from God. As a psychiatrist, you recognize low serotonin levels. Which is the correct viewpoint? None of them. If your only tool is a hammer, all your problem will be nails, said Mark Twain. A quote that sums up the Deformation Professionelle. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, named the effect the man with the hammer tendency after Twain. But that's a perfectly disastrous way to think and a perfectly disastrous way to operate in the world. So you've got to have multiple models. And the models have to come up from multiple disciplines. Because all the wisdom of the world isn't to be found in one little academic department. Here are a few examples of deformation professionelle. Surgeons want to solve almost every medical problem with a scalpel, even if their patients could be treated with less invasive methods. Armies think of military solutions first. Engineers structural. Trend gurus see trends in everything. Incidentally, this is one of the most idiotic ways to view the world. In short, if you ask someone the crux of a particular problem, they usually link it to their own area of expertise. So what's wrong with that? It's good if, say, a tailor sticks to what he knows. The deformation professionelle becomes hazardous when people apply their specialized process in areas where they don't belong. Surely you'll come across some of these. Teachers who scold their friends like students. New mothers who begin to treat their husbands like children. Or consider the omnipresent Excel spreadsheet that is featured on every computer. We use them even when it makes no sense. For example, when generating 10-year financial projections for startups or when comparing potential lovers we have sourced from dating sites. Excel spreadsheets might well be one of the most dangerous recent inventions. Even in his own jurisdiction, the man with the hammer tends to overuse it. Literary reviewers are trained to detect authors' references, symbols, and hidden messages. As a novelist, I realized that literary reviewers conjure up such devices where there are none. This is not a million miles away from what business journalists do. They score the most trivial utterings of central bank governors and somehow discover hints of fiscal policy change by parsing their words. In conclusion, if you take your problem to an expert, don't expect the overall best solution. Expect an approach that can be solved with the expert's toolkit. The brain isn't a central computer. Rather, it's a Swiss Army knife with many specialized tools. Unfortunately, our pocket knives are incomplete. Given our life experiences and our professional expertise, we already possess a few blades. But to better equip ourselves, we must try to add 2 or 3 additional tools to our repertoire. Mental models that are far afield from our areas of expertise. For example, over the past few years, I have begun to take a biological view of the world and have won a new understanding of complex systems. Locate your shortcomings and find suitable knowledge and methodologies to balance them. It takes about a year to internalize the most important ideas of a new field, and it's worth it. Your pocket knife will be bigger and more versatile and your thoughts sharper. Chapter 93. Mission Accomplished. Zeigarnik Effect. Berlin, 1927. A group of university students and professors visit a restaurant. The waiter takes order upon order, including special requests, but doesn't bother to write anything down. This is going to end badly, they think. But after a short wait, all diners receive exactly what they ordered. After dinner, outside on the street, Russian psychology student Bluma Zeigarnik notices that she has left her scarf behind in the restaurant. She goes back in, finds the waiter with the incredible memory, and asks him if he has seen it. He stares at her blankly. He has no idea who she is or where she sat. "How can you have forgotten?" she asks indignantly. "Especially with your super memory." The waiter replies curtly, "I keep every order in my head until it's served." Zeigarnik and her mentor, Kurt Lewin, studied this strange behavior and found that all people function more or less like the waiter. We seldom forget uncompleted tasks. They persist in our consciousness and do not let up, tugging at us like little children until we give them our attention. On the other hand, once we have completed a task and checked it off our mental list, it is erased from memory. The researcher has lent her name to this. Scientists now speak of the Zeigarnik effect. However, in her investigation, she uncovered a few untidy outliers. Some people kept a completely clear head, even if they had dozens of projects on the go. Only in recent years could Troy Baumeister and his research team at Florida State University shed light on this. He took students who were a few months away from their final examinations and split them into 3 groups. Group 1 had to focus on a party during the current semester. Group 2 had to concentrate on the exam. Group 3 had to focus on the exam and also create a detailed study plan. Then Baumeister asked students to complete words under time pressure. Some students saw PA, blah blah, and filled in panic, while others thought of party or Paris. This was a clever method of finding out what was on each of their minds. As expected, Group 1 had relaxed about the upcoming exam, while students in Group 2 could think of nothing else. Most astonishing was the result from Group 3. Although these students also had to focus on the upcoming exam, their minds were clear and free from anxiety. Further experiments confirmed this. Outstanding tasks gnaw at us only until we have a clear idea of how we will deal with them. Zeigarnik mistakenly believed that it was necessary to complete tasks to erase them from memory, but it's not. A good plan of action suffices. David Allen, the author of a best-selling book aptly entitled Getting Things Done, argues that he has one goal: to have a head as clear as water. For this, you don't need to have your whole life sorted into tidy compartments. but it does mean that you need a detailed plan for dealing with the messier areas. This plan must be divided into step-by-step tasks and preferably written down. Only when this is done can your mind rest. The adjective detailed is important. Organize my wife's birthday party or find a new job are wordless. Alan forces his clients to split such projects into 20 to 50 individual tasks. It's worth noting that Alan's recommendation seems to fly in the face of the planning fallacy. Chapter 91. The more detailed our planning, the more we tend to overlook factors from the periphery that will derail our projects. But here is the rub. If you want peace of mind, go for Alan's approach. If you want the most accurate estimate on costs, benefits, and duration of a project, forget your detailed plan and look up similar projects. If you want both, do both. Fortunately, you can do all this yourself with the aid of the decidedly low-tech device. Place a notepad by your bed. The next time you cannot get to sleep, jot down outstanding tasks and how you will tackle them. This will silence the cacophony of inner voices. You want to find God, but you are out of cat food, so create a plan to deal with it, says Alan. His advice is sound, even if you have already found God or have no cat.